Hey everybody, Graham here. So this is the fifth or sixth time I've attempted to record this video, and I'm tripping over my words and talking myself into corners, and I just can't seem to get through it. I've even made notes, which I don't normally do. I don't want to write a script because I don't want to read a script on camera. My idea for how I do these things has always been just to talk to you, and that's what I want to do. And what I want to talk about, and I'm not sure why I'm having trouble getting this out, but what I want to talk about is a larger issue that surrounds the Amber Heard thing, which is that if you make an individual person a figurehead for your movement, for your political movement, if that person turns out to be a fraud, then your movement takes a credibility hit. And that's what's happened with the leftists and the feminists who were touting Amber Heard as a victim of domestic violence. And as we've seen, it turns out that she was not a victim at all. She was, in fact, a perpetrator. But there are still people on the left defending her. And I think there are sort of two camps there. There are the hardcore dogmatic types who are defending her out of practicality, hoping that if they keep saying that she's a victim enough and that, the trial was unfair, they keep saying that enough, eventually people will believe it. But I think enough people watch the trial that that's not going to work. I think the other camp is just people who feel wounded by the fact that someone who was supposedly representing their movement has shown to be not so credible. And I think they're just in denial. As it's kind of cliche to talk about the stages of grief, denial, bargaining, whatever it is. But I do think that even in the smallest setback, you do go through a little bit of denial, even if it's only for a few minutes. But I think in this case, it's sort of like, well, that can't possibly be right. Because for 6 years I've been hearing about how victimized she was, and now all of a sudden it turns out that's not true. It takes a little while for people to get their heads around it if they were invested in the idea. I think those of us who were not particularly invested in the idea were not particularly surprised and are not particularly upset about it. I'm in fact pretty happy that maybe we'll start to take domestic violence against men seriously. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that you don't want to hold people up and put a halo on them to promote your movement, because if they turn out to be a fraud, then you've screwed up. I think that political movements do much better when they're based around ideas. And initially, the idea behind this movement was that women are abused by men, women should be believed when they claim abuse, etc. Now, I think that idea has its roots mainly in power politics. I think that, there are people who look at the political situation and they say, what can I grab onto to bring people around to my side? And at some point, feminists grabbed onto domestic violence. And to be fair, they're not wrong. I mean, domestic violence is a problem, and probably the majority of it is perpetrated by men against women. But that does not mean that every woman who claims to be abused is telling the truth, and it does not mean that women cannot be abusers. And it does not mean that men cannot be victims of abuse. And critically, contra to one of Amber Heard's expert witnesses, men can be the victims of domestic abuse that is perpetrated by women. One of Amber's expert witnesses, anytime she was pressed on that point, would only allow the fact that men could be victims of domestic violence at the hands of other men. But we know that's not true. I think anybody who's spent enough time on this earth to run across a decent cross-section of humanity knows that there are violent women. So I think the subject of domestic abuse, while recognizing that the majority of it is male on female, I think we can moderate that idea. I think we can say, we should take allegations of domestic abuse seriously, regardless of who they come from. But we should not necessarily convict someone based on an accusation. And when I say convict, I'm not just talking about criminally. I'm talking about in the court of public opinion, in the court of employment. The fact that somebody's name has been besmirched should not be cause for cancellation. Cooler heads should prevail, and we should wait until we know what the facts of the situation are. That's not very good for whipping up people's political passions, right? That's not the kind of idea that gets people out into the streets. But like most things, it's not in the domain of either political side. It's not one team's ball. It's the game ball, and both sides get to touch it. I can't really think of any other way to put it than that. Movements like to use people as figureheads because people are inclined to put stock in the personal expressions of individual people more so than in abstract ideas. But it's abstract ideas that make better law, I think, because situations are all different. I mean, even if you go through a particular experience a number of times, there are going to be different features on every occasion, right? I mean, I put gas in my car about once a week. Every time I do it, it's essentially the same experience. I pull up to the pump, I put my card in, I put the nozzle in the tank, but there are differences. Maybe the price is different. Maybe one day I go into the gas station to get a drink. And it's the same thing with people. Maybe the majority of people are true and honest about what they claim. Maybe most people who report abuse are on the level. But that doesn't mean that there won't be people who aren't. I vary a lot in my opinion of humanity. But essentially, I think most people are essentially good. I also think most people are essentially stupid, but that's a talk for another time. But I'm realistic about it, and I think that when I say people are mostly good, I mean that individual people are mostly good, which is to say person X is basically a good person, but that doesn't mean they don't do bad things on occasion, number one. And number two, that the mass of humanity is mostly good, that most people are good, but not all people. Some people are bad. And some bad people are good at appearing to be good. I hope this isn't getting too convoluted. My point being is that individual people are flawed. Groups of people are flawed. Movements are flawed, but movements do better when the ideas behind them are strong and when you're not trying to sell them based on a personality. Okay, I more or less got through it. So now I'm going to go edit this and see if I actually got my idea across this time. Like I said, this is take 5 or 6, and I haven't even attempted to edit the other takes because I just kind of ended them with, oh, this is terrible. So we'll see. Anyway, that's my spiel. Figureheads look good on a ship, but they don't help it sail. And I hope you all know what I mean. So I'm going to leave it right there, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Graham out. Bye.